So the votes have all now been counted and Brexit has been achieved. The EU referendum vote has ended, and with about 1 million more people voting to have the UK leave the EU than to stay, over 30 million total people voting, it looks like the UK will be leaving the EU. And so this video is going to be my reactions as this is happening. Quick aside, I already recorded this video, but it is almost impossible for me to get the file to my computer. Something about Android phones and Macs. Anyway, this is one of the problems of me being in a hotel right now on travel for work. But anyway, I want to talk about a couple of different areas of some of the short, medium, and long-term consequences of the Leave vote beating out Remain. And first of all, I want to say that I am surprised, because going into this, I saw that the polls had Remain narrowly winning, and it seemed to me like that, combined with the John Oliver's great video about it, and the obvious nature of the advantages, Joe Cox being assassinated by someone who seems to be affiliated with the Leave campaign, it seemed like that would be enough to win the day. But this is our reality. It didn't actually work out that way. And you can see some of the consequences already starting. We're still in the same 24-hour period, and already the pound is massively down. World markets are dropping. Ones that directly impact the UK and ones that indirectly, because after all, we've been saying that if the UK left the EU, that is going to harm the UK economy, it's going to harm the EU economy, and it's also going to harm world economies, because this is going to interfere with trade worldwide. And so that's one of the long-term economic consequences, but it's also in this case a short-term one as well. Now, what about politically? Well, everybody's predicting that David Cameron, the leader of the UK right now, is probably going to step down. He was strongly in favor of the UK remaining in the EU. I personally don't think that he should. I don't understand why in the British system, every time you fail, you immediately drop out of politics. We don't do that way in the US. So I think that he should remain. If anybody's going to deal with the EU during the withdrawal process, the negotiations that have to do with that, he's probably the right person for that. And so that process is going to start soon, and it could last up to 2 years. And that involves a process of figuring out how the new country that will be formed, I know it's not technically a new country, but the new independent country will deal with the former EU. There are procedures in place, but it has never actually been done. This is historic and unfortunate. And so those are some of the political consequences, but the 2-year period is just what it technically could take up to. I mean, considering how many overlapping layers of regulations and all of that we have here, it could well take much longer than that. I mean, we could have 5 years go by and the EU still basically holding on to the UK at that point. I also want to talk about Nigel Farage. Because he is a guy that is pissing me off to no end. I mean, he's a guy, look at some of his quotes from the past, the xenophobic quotes, racist quotes, spreading racist propaganda and posters to try to get people scared enough to vote for Leave. And I watched a couple of interviews with him once it became clear that Leave was going to win, and this is like an amalgamation of every British villain from a movie that I've ever seen. This is a bad guy. I don't know if he's just using the immigration thing to rile people up, if he actually believes it. I'm going to lean towards he believes it, considering some of the things that he said, but he's just a bad guy, and this is not the person that you want leading an important party like the UK Independence Party. I don't want him to have any larger, louder voice in British politics than he already does. And so for him to be a winner today, that makes the rest of us collectively a loser, whether we live in the UK or not. And look, the arguments that they made to try to convince people to leave had to do with gaining control over how many immigrants are coming in, particularly Muslim immigrants. There were concerns about the economy, of course, and I understand that. It seems ironic to me that in being worried about the state of the economy, you would vote for something that would destroy your economy, but we have experience with that in the US as well, so I'm not going to judge them too much in that. Now, there are some interesting breakdowns in how different demographics voted. And so if you look at a breakdown of age, then you'll see that the 18 to 24-year-olds were massively in favor, almost 3 to 1 Remain over Leave. And these are the people that are going to be around to deal with this for 50 plus, 60 plus years. Then if you jump to the 65 plus, they desperately wanted to leave, even though many of them aren't even going to be around to really see this put into place. Now that's the way our voting works. I understand. We all vote. Our age isn't taken into account aside from having to be 18. But it is interesting when you can vote for something that is going to have such long-term ramifications that you're not going to be around for, and you're going to stick the youngest generations, those who desperately feel that you need to go in an opposite direction, with the consequences of it. And that's the way it works, I get that, but it seems a little bit odd to me. Now also, if you break it down by education, the least educated were the most likely to vote to leave. I just figured I should throw that out there. When you combine that with the fact that both Sarah Palin and Donald Trump desperately wanted the Brexit to happen, maybe there are some issues with it. I mean, maybe if some of the least educated people, the least politically sophisticated people all seem to agree that it's a good idea, you should look into it a little bit more. But oh well. It happened. It passed. Now, let's talk about some of the other consequences. So you have the UK leaving the EU. But the UK itself is an amalgamation of different states, in effect. I mean, you have Scotland, you have Ireland, and they didn't vote the same as a lot of the rest of England. And so you had Scotland, who was for remaining, and interestingly, less than a couple of years ago, they narrowly turned down becoming independent from the UK. And so, perversely in some way, by remaining attached to the UK, they're forcing themselves to leave the EU, which they don't want to do, but that's not permanent. They could vote for independence again, and I think that that's probably pretty likely at this point. Ireland's a bit more of a mixed bag in terms of how they voted, but it's not impossible that they might want to split off either. There are huge advantages to being part of the EU, and people who are just mostly scared of brown immigrants don't necessarily understand all the complexities that have to do with that. And so, in wanting to go it alone, it could be that England's going to go it alone from even some of their closest neighbors, and that would be an interesting consequence from this. Not one that I look forward to, but interesting nonetheless. Now, let's talk about us, because that's what I like to do. A lot of people are saying if this argument to Brexit could work as well as it did, then maybe that signals that Donald Trump is going to be more of a threat than we thought, that he might succeed in a way that doesn't seem that likely right now. And that's possible, but I don't think that this says too much about that. I mean, look, is there xenophobia in both countries? Yes. But we already knew that about the US, and we know that there is a certain portion of the population that will vote based on that xenophobia. I think that those people probably vote Republican every cycle, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you look at the effect on the pound, on world markets, this is the sort of thing that we've been saying Trump would lead to, with talking about crashing the world economy and withdrawing from all these trade agreements and all of that. So if you want to talk about how severe of a threat he is, this could be an indication of how quickly those sorts of threats can become real. It's a sad time, man. I didn't think that it would happen. I'm really surprised, and I was following it, and I was pressing refresh as the votes were being brought in, and at various points, up until about 30% of the vote, Remain was actually winning, and I thought that in the end they would win out. And look, we're going to have to see what happens and how fast the transition happens. It's not even 100% sure that it's going to happen, although I think that it's likely. It'll be interesting to see if David Cameron sticks around. It's a complicated situation, and one that, despite my relative lack of prior history of following British politics, I could not stay away from, even though I'm on a work trip right now. That's pretty much all I was doing. For those of you who waited up late to watch this video, I apologize for the earlier version of it not making it on. I was literally trying to still upload it while I was filming this one, and it failed once again. And so, being away from my home studio really sucks. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching my videos, guys. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about the Brexit situation, what will happen in the short and the long term. I'll read those, and I'll see you in the next one.